Scott Doughty. It's Scott with two T's, Doughty, and I'm an MD, as we discussed. I own UP Holistic Medicine. This is a medical practice that has been in existence since the fall of 2014. I've lived in the UP for 15 of the past 25 years, having come here back in '92 after finishing medical school.
Okay. With this chelation therapy, what is chelation? Let's start with the simple stuff.
Yeah, chelation is really a chemical term. It means binding, and specifically in this use, binding of metals. So when we talk about chelating metals, we talk about putting something in the body that chemically is shaped to attach to metals that we're hoping to remove from the body.
So when you're talking about removing metals, it's like you have a brick of gold in your body? How's that work?
Yeah, so we all have some degree of heavy metal amount in our bodies, some more than others, and there's been chelation therapy going back 80 years, and it's always been about removing things that shouldn't be in the body that are metallic. So around the world wars, there were issues with heavy metal exposures that were addressed with chelation. The chelation concept is really the same as it's always been. The evolution in technique has been with safety and use of materials that aren't toxic themselves. So where we currently stand with IV chelation is with something called EDTA, and that's the chelate that is used in the TACT-2 trial. It was the same chelate that was used in the TACT-1 trial, and that binds metals and then is excreted from the body as a bound chelate and metal combination.
So back in the 30s and 40s, what did they do then? What did they do then to chelate the metals out of the body?
There were other agents that are no longer even available to use. One was called BAL, another one called penicillamine. Those are two of the main ones, but there are some other sulfur-based ones that are still used today, but EDTA is the one that is being looked at in the chelation trial.
Now, is this like a designer chemical that you guys are using, or is this like a naturally created product, or how's that work?
It's a man-made amino acid derivative, and so it's not something that you grow or dig up out of the ground, but it's also not it's not a toxin itself.
Okay, so it's not like you could go down to the local grocery and pick up one of those bottles of something that you could just the one a day or something like that.
Well, no, but EDTA is something that is in supplement form. It's just thought to not be bioavailable when it's taken orally, and so the intravenous form is naturally going right into the bloodstream and mixing with the blood and doing its metal grabbing in the bloodstream itself.
So now with why intravenous?
Bioavailability. To not have to rely on the gut absorption, which with EDTA and most chelates is the gut's doing its job. It's not letting everything in, and we're glad for that. But in cases where we want to get in deeper, the intravenous form is the way to go.
So is this a therapy where, for example, a ACE inhibitor, you have to saturate the bloodstream, so it's a constant saturation to be able to lower blood pressure?
Right.
Is this the same thing where it's a one-time use, or is it a therapy?
It's a program, and I'll use the TACT-2 regimen as an example. Participants in TACT-2 will undergo 40 infusions, and one might say, wow, why does it take so many? Well, when you're going in and trying to remove metals from somebody, you have to respect the rest of what happens in that process. The EDTA does not say, "Ooh, there's some cadmium, there's some lead. Let's grab those bad boys and get out of here." The EDTA says, "Oh, there's some magnesium, there's some sodium, other minerals that we want to hold on to."
What is it actually bonding onto? Yes, metal, but
Metal.
what part of the metal is it actually bonding onto?
There are attractants within the EDTA that are sulfur based, and sulfur tends to form bonds that can hold on.
Okay.
And so it therefore can't be super selective, and the process of chelation does involve the replenishment of the important things that are also lost, like magnesium and other minerals.
Okay,
But it's a slow process. We recognize that all of a person's heavy metal burden does not exist in the bloodstream. So by removing some of the metals from the blood and then giving time, there's a re-equilibration that takes place within the body, and you come back the following week and you chelate again and you take a little bit more, and then the following week you chelate again and you take a little bit more. And based on the historical benefits of chelation, 40 infusions was settled on for both TACT 1 and TACT 2.
So is this a 9-month process then?
It really is a 40-week venture, and so people are here for 3 hours for 40 times, and we need them to do all of those 40 within a 1-year time frame.
Now, along those lines, it sounds like you're saying that you're going to be, you're ostensibly, I'll use that word, I like that word,
Mm-hmm.
you're ostensibly stripping the body of metals and replenishing it. For example, are you giving your patients potassium in supplements to balance that out, or the iron supplements and so on and so forth?
Right, yeah. So part of the study design will be that everybody will get oral vitamins as part of the regimen. Some people will get high dose oral vitamins and minerals.
Okay.
And that's part of what is being looked at in the study as to whether or not the standard oral vitamins and minerals will do the trick, or whether the higher dose will prove to be more effective and safer.
Zoom back onto a different view. TV.
Yeah.
You call it a study. You called it a study a couple times now.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and expound on that?
Yeah, so this is a study or a research trial that is based at the NIH in terms of its funding source. That's the National Institutes for Health. I like to tell people this is not a pharmaceutical company spending a lot of money, a gazillion dollars, trying to get a drug approved. This is our tax dollars at work. This is our government health arm making the decision as to what information will be useful to know. And because the first TACT trial was so effective at revealing some benefit from this kind of therapy, it naturally called some of that data into question, and therefore more questions came out of the research, which is often the case. But fortunately, some more funding came for a second trial that dives even deeper into what chelation can do for diabetic patients specifically who've had a heart attack. The first TACT trial was only people who had had a heart attack, and they didn't need to be diabetic. The benefits of that trial showed that diabetics were impacted very positively. And I can run some numbers by you just to put that into perspective. The reduction in recurrent heart attacks or death or stroke or hospitalization for a stent or an angioplasty, that was a 40 to 50% reduction in the group that was chelated. Some people like to say, well, what was the number needed to treat? Because in medicine, we now know that that's part of what we can know when we're studying the effectiveness of a therapy. How many people needed to receive that therapy in order for one person to not have a heart attack or not die or not have a stroke? And the number needed to treat for chelation in diabetics was between 5 and 6 people. That's all. A handful of people needed to be treated for one of them to be saved from a life-altering or life-ending event. There aren't many examples of scientific studies that have outdone or shown to be more effective at helping people than that. I think that's probably why TACT-2 was funded, because it was somewhat of a groundbreaking set of results. In fact, the symbol for the TACT-2 trial is a black swan. And if you read into what's going on with the black swan in this logo, it comes out of a book that talks about events that are surprising, potentially groundbreaking, unexpected. So I really like being a part of exploring more answers about something that got people's attention, both people that were supportive of it and people that were skeptical or opposed to it. So let's get some more information and really understand.
That's actually a good book. I like that book.
You know that book? Yeah.
What was your sample size? Okay, before the sample size, how many doctors are participating in this trial?
They expect there'll be about 100 clinical sites, mostly in the US, but some in Canada. And that was about how many that participated in the first chelation trial.
And of course, at least following up, what's the sample size right now?
Planned for 1,200.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So of course they asked me when I was requesting to get into this study, they said, so how many patients do you think you can get? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, we just had Hockey Town. Who knows how many the UP can conjure up? But the point is, we're isolated. There's a regional medical center here. Lots of people come to Marquette for their health care. And I've even had people from Newberry leaving notes on my door saying, are you going to be doing chelation someday? I'd really like that therapy. This was before I was even in the study or even trying to get into the study. So it's a therapy that more and more people know about, and I think this trial will make it land in an even bigger way in people's minds and understandings of what therapies are potentially available.
Now the question that I'm sure the viewing audience really wants to know.
Yeah.
How much?
How much what?
How much is it?
How much will people have to pay?
And in the similar vein, will the insurance cover it?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing is that this is a clinical trial that for the people that are participating as research subjects, not only do they not pay anything, but they're getting a gas money stipend every time they come to the office. $15 each time they come for an infusion. And the entire experience for them is otherwise free of cost.
Okay. Now, are you writing the paper on this, or are you just contributing to a paper being written?
The latter. I'm not in this to become an author. If there was an opportunity to do so, I would have to check and see how busy I was, but I'm not. And my local colleagues know me well enough to know that I've never been one to put research before patient care or research before education. This was an opportunity that for me I couldn't pass up because of the melding of the holistic world, the chelation that's been happening in doctors' offices around the country for, as we said, decades, and the mainstream medical world with the former Harvard cardiologist as its principal investigator, and Duke University and Columbia and Mount Sinai in South Florida, all of them involved with this study that the first version of it was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So this is mainstream stuff,
okay,
combined with a so-called, previously called, alternative therapy.
With your, when do you expect results to actually start coming out from this study?
It'll be a while. So here's how it goes. 40 infusions, about a year of a person participating here, and then they go into follow-up mode with Duke University being in touch with them by phone on some regular schedule for 5 more years. The first TACT trial essentially took 10 years from beginning to publication.
You've mentioned TACT a couple times. Why don't you Explain what that is.
Yeah, TACT is the Trial to Assess Chelation Therapy, TACT.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell us where you went to school and your background.
Yeah. I went to Temple University Medical School, and when I graduated in 1992, I moved up here to Marquette and went through the family medicine residency program at then Marquette General Hospital.
Okay. Now, what was it called? UPHS? Or
UPHS Marquette.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a relationship with them at all?
I do. I taught on the faculty in the residency program for 7 years and finished up that in 2014. Upon leaving, amicably, there was a clear agreement that I would love to continue to educate medical students and residents locally. So I've had a handful of medical students and residents over the past several years join me in my practice here for 2 to 4 weeks at a time. I routinely have the entire second year class of family medicine residents in my office, and annually, I'll say. Just this past Friday, we spent a few hours together here talking about what happens here and what integrative medicine is, and giving them some ideas about what else healing is and what else health means that may not be stressed in their training.
Now, one last question. When you're saying you're pulling these metals out of the body, I know what that means. Is that the same thing as trying to scrape away plaque from the insides of the walls of the blood vessels?
It's a really, there's a fine point here, and I'll say a couple of things. One is, I am becoming more routine in my exploration of heavy metal burden in people. And it's rather shocking how many people have what appears to be excess metals, be it mercury, cadmium, lead, antimony, aluminum. These are showing up in people's blood tests that I'm doing. So the next step in the connection between heavy metals and human health really comes to the place of oxidative stress. We all know what antioxidants are. They're supposed to kind of keep our system clean and keep us healthy. What they're keeping us healthy from are oxidants or oxidative stress markers. And metals are very involved in oxidation, and oxidation equals inflammation if it's not countered by an antioxidant. Metals are such powerful oxidants that you can't eat enough colorful fruits and vegetables to truly keep yourself safe if you have a heavy metal burden. So it's the oxidative stress that is thought to represent the inflammation in the blood vessels that then lead to some of the blockages.
Okay. Like I said, the follow-up question to finish this all up here.
Yeah.
How do people get infected with these metals?
It's really environmental. There's metal in the air. There's metals in some water sources. Flint being a terrible example,
That's where I'm from.
but a really good example of something that was highly publicized and was clearly linked to some decisions and some things that were done with water supply. But there's even evidence that long-distance road bikers like myself, who spend a lot of time next to traffic, riding their bikes on the road, have increased lead and cadmium in their systems. So we often don't know exactly what the source was, and therefore we pin it on environmental exposures that we can't be more clear about most times.
Okay. Perfect.
For years, doctors that do chelation have known that it seems to have a benefit on the circulatory system in their patients. People can avoid amputations, and this isn't me selling chelation as a way to not get an amputation, but there are lots of stories and even studies that have been done that have shown that people with circulatory issues have had their circulation cleaned up through the course of chelation. And you'll be interested to hear that generally in the first half of the chelation regimen, there isn't a ton of benefit. The benefit comes later as you start to remove metals and then they diffuse out, and then you remove them and then they diffuse out, and they come out of the bones and they come out of the blood vessel linings, they come out of the brain and the liver and the kidneys. People that benefit from chelation tend to benefit in the second half and even beyond. So even after the chelation is over, there's a continued improvement in function. People feel younger, they can walk farther, they find that they have a return of some of their endurance and energy that they once had.
Okay. Well, of course, the floor is now open. You wanted to add anything?
I feel like we covered Tact 2.
Yeah.
We talked about chelation. We talked about the importance of the trial. I don't know if you want me to say how people can get in touch or if that's something that will be voiced in.
Generally, we'll go ahead and throw that on the website. Do you have a website or something like that?
I do, yeah.
I'll just put that on.
Okay, yeah.
We usually say check our website to check this out. And
Right.
Put it in the web.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah,
Corporate.
of course.
Of course, my personal we're good. So yeah.
Okay,
I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate your time. So
thank you.
My personal question is, how do you get rid of? Would that actually affect blood pressure?
Yeah, well, blood pressure is inflammation, and it's in the blood vessels where the smooth muscle is constricting and not relaxing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't say, chelation's good for what ails you, but most of the degenerative conditions, whether it's high blood pressure or heart disease or some things going on in the brain, or fibromyalgia, that big one that nobody really knows what to do with, there's been benefit with chelation in all of those.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't help but think that I personally, even though I don't have health issues now, I'll be chelating myself someday.
Fair point.
My colleagues around the country that are doing it say, you feel better.
Yeah.
And I'm planning on feeling well for a long time.
That's really groovy. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, yeah.